Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our second video lecture of the course. And this week I'm going to talk about the longest or lengthiest of the two readings that I had you read, the article from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. And the topic of the article was the definition of death. So we're continuing our thoughts about what is death, and I thought it would be beneficial to expose you to a variety of philosophical positions, not just those that are medical, as you might have noticed last week, but philosophical positions as well. And let's get into it. Let's start with just a brief prayer in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. I thank you and praise you, Holy God, that we've been able to come together again. And I pray for all of us that who have read this article and done the readings for the week, that you will give us the wisdom to understand what we're reading, so that we can do well in this course. And I want to pray for everybody in the course, especially those who are working, have families, and might already feel that the course is becoming a slog. I pray for that you will pour out your grace upon those people, Holy God, to give them the stamina, physical and intellectual stamina, to do what they need to do well. Holy God, I thank you that you've created us, and that you have, although death is part of the human experience, and maybe that was not the way it was supposed to be, but you have provided us a solution to death in your Son, who has conquered death on the cross by experiencing death, becoming part of the human experience of death, but destroying death through his death and granting us eternal life. And it is in the name of your Son, Jesus of Nazareth, the Christ, I pray. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Now, we are not going to read or reread this whole article. I read the article with you, so just so you know that, because I want you to know that Dr. Dunn suffers with you. I share your suffering. It is a lengthy article, and it can't always be well understood. It's written by a philosopher whose name is at the end of the article. Let me just find it so I can show it to you. If you go to the end of the article and go all the way down, you'll see this copyright David DeGrazia at GWU. Is that George Washington University? I don't know, but nevertheless, David DeGrazia. Some of his articles are cited in the bibliography. Okay, but anyways, it appears that he is the one who revised the article, the original article in the encyclopedia. I don't see any other names that to which the article is attributed. So Dr. DeGrazia, thank you very much. Dr. DeGrazia certainly has a point of view, but that's not what I'm concerned about. I'd rather go through the article and pinpoint certain areas, certain things that you might not understand because they're philosophical, but also, perhaps point out a few ideas that I had while I was reading the article. First, let's move along because I don't want to dilly-dally. The first thing I'd like to point out to you is this phrase that he uses, de re or de dicto. And it comes up later in the article towards the end, okay? These are just two Latin phrases, and philosophers love Latin because, we want to impress people. And I actually do have a degree in philosophy as a baccalaureate. So, de re is a phrase from Latin, excuse me. I wonder if you can see that. Hold on a second, let me make it bold. There we go. Is a Latin phrase, de re, which basically means of the thing itself. So it's just kind of a fancier way of saying per se. Like someone might say, what is death, if I ask you the question, what is death per se? Okay, per se is a Latin phrase which literally means through itself. But it can also mean in itself. You might say in and of itself. Why can't I just say what is death in and of itself? Why do I say per se? Because, as I said, I'm a pompous academic, and we like to use Latin and Greek and all sorts of languages to impress our students. You know, there must be some reason we went into debt to get the PhD, you know, and we get to use fancy languages. That's one of the fun things about it. So de re means of the thing itself, or you could translate in and of itself. The other phrase, de dicto, means, say, of the way in which we speak about something. Say, of the way in which it is spoken, or by which something is spoken. And the meaning would be the words we use. Okay, is death just a word? Or is there an essentiality, an essence to death that, you know, makes it kind of a thing that you can identify? That's death. Or is it just a word that we use? That's death. You know? So the one meaning of getting a definition of death would be, we want to know what is death de re. And near the end of the article, De Grazia starts talking about those who say that death is just a matter of a word game, or a word we give to a cluster of functions that are part of a process. And that's when we would be talking about death de dicto, the way in which we speak about death. But is there actually a definition for death? If you want my opinion, if you can conceptualize it, then you can define it. You know, then it has an essence. Okay, that's kind of like my view of the whole thing. People who say, well, you know, you can't really, it's futile to talk about death. You know, you really can't define it. Well, at that point, then my attitude is kind of like, well, then shut up. You've got nothing to say then, you know. But these people write reams, you know, reams of paper and articles and books talking about how there's no definition for death. Okay, well then, why are you writing like a 200-page book to say there's no definition of death? If there's no definition, then you really have not much to say about it. Basta. That's the end of it. Okay, so I just wanted to point out those two phrases because you might not know what they mean. Just turning my page here. On the second page, at least the second page as I have it printed out, but for those of you who don't have what I have, under number 1, which is in the section number 1, which is entitled The Current Mainstream View, the Whole Brain Approach, De Grazia talks about, well, the whole brain approach is human death is the irreversible cessation of the functioning of the entire brain, including the brain stem. That's important to remember because as you read the article, as you read De Grazia's article here in the encyclopedia, I found, and this is not uncommon in scholarship, believe me. Don't think that this is somehow unusual, but my impression from the way I looked at it was that De Grazia had a difficult time maintaining the integrity of this definition. Okay? Because it's very specific. It's the irreversible ceasing, stoppage of the functioning of the entire brain, including the brain stem. That's the whole brain standard, which is the most common standard for ascertaining death in the medical profession. And as you go through the article, you might notice that de Grazia seems to tweak and change parts of this definition as he, brings up objections to it. I don't get the impression that he is a whole brain supporter. I get the impression that he might be more of the higher brain or the higher, consciousness view supporter. Nevertheless, that is confusing, and it's really, what's the word I'm looking for here? It's really invalid to do that. If you are going to present counter-examples or counter-arguments to a certain argument or a definition, you really need to stick closely to what the definition is. Because otherwise you fall into what philosophers call a fallacy of diversion. Is that the name? I wrote it down here somewhere. It's called a fallacy of diversion. It's a logical fallacy. And basically what it means is changing the terms of the argument in the middle of the argument. Okay? Or changing the definition of something as you're arguing against it. And it can be simply, leaving out a particular criterion that's important to the definition. And I really think that de Grazia does this with the whole brain standard. In fact, I think he does it frequently throughout the article. Let me just give you one example of this. Turning to my section here. This is in... This is in the same section. It's in section 1. On my printout, it's page 6, but I'll show it to you. Okay. This section in particular, let me zoom out a little bit here. Okay. Where he talks about, the whole brain approach. There's growing empirical evidence that total brain failure is not sufficient for human death. Assuming the latter, human death, is construed, as whole brain advocates generally construe it, as the breakdown of organismic functioning mediated by the brain. So the breakdown of body functioning mediated by the brain. And by organismic functioning, he would mean here, I believe, cardiopulmonary, the heart, and respiratory as well, the heart and the lungs. But, as I said, if we go back to page 2, that is not the definition that whole brain theorists or proponents would say. Okay? The reason that the body's heart stops pumping and stops circulating blood, and the reason that the lungs stop breathing and performing their function of oxygenating the blood, putting oxygen into the blood, the reason they do that is not just because they stop doing it, okay? They stop doing it because at the very minimum, the essential part of the brain which regulates that, the brain stem, I believe the medulla, he gives a little trip through the brain here, a guide to the brain later on. But anyways, the medulla, or at least the brain stem, let's say the brain stem for those of us who aren't medical people, which controls these functions, is so severely damaged that these functions won't work anymore. Which implies that these functions either reside in or rely on the brain stem for their functioning. They just don't function alone. The heart does not pump on its own. It needs an electrical impulse from the brainstem. Okay? The lungs do not just breathe. They are part of that involuntary nerve. Excuse me. What's the word I'm looking for? Our nerve system, part of that involuntary part. What do we call it? A reflex. It's an involuntary reflex that comes from our brain. Okay? I don't have to think and will to breathe every few seconds. Okay? The brain just does that. Even when my body is doing other things, like right now I'm talking. And in the midst of talking and thinking and all sorts of other things going on in my body is also breathing and processing oxygen. Okay? Into my blood. I don't even have to think about it. Okay? Because the brain is, in essence, already thinking about it. Or at least that part of the brain. So that would be an instance where De Grazia really has kind of garbled the definition that he gives here and committed what I said is a fallacy of diversion. And it's not the only time, but it's the time I'm going to that I want to point it out to you. Why does he do this? I think because it makes it easier to attack for his own purposes. And see, he does this at the bottom of page 6 as well. Distinct from the one that understands human death in terms of loss of organismic functioning mediated by the brain. Well, the whole brain theory is called the whole brain theory because, you know, the brain is essential to the function of these other organs. Forget about whether you can keep the heart and the lungs working with machines. Okay? That, in fact, kind of, in my view, is an argument very much in favor of those who would say that the whole brain approach is the most appropriate and most valid, the validest determination or definition of death of the organism, the person. Why? Because why do you need these machines then? Because the brain is gone. The brain, if you take the brain out of the equation, either, let's say, for example, during a heart-lung operation, you know that you have to anesthetize the brain, or you have to essentially put the person into a brief coma, okay, in order to, let's say it's a transplant operation, you know, take out the lungs and take out the heart. But in the interim, you hook everything up to other machines, we call them heart-lung machines, which process the blood, circulate the blood, oxygenate the blood, remove the impurities from the blood, okay? They are, yes, doing the functions of the heart and lungs that aren't there, but they're also doing the functions of the brain. They're taking over functions of the brain. Well, let's forget about a transplant where the heart and lungs aren't there, because you might say, well, yeah, but the heart and the lungs aren't there, and the machine is doing this. It's oxygenating the blood, etc. The brain doesn't oxygenate the blood. The circulatory system does that. Okay? The brain just pumps the heart, or tells the heart to pump the blood. Okay, fine. Well, you have, you know, situations where you have to operate on a person's heart or lungs, okay? And so my point, I guess, would be, if I think about it, that, to De Grazia, that yes, there are functions connected to the heart and the lungs that they do, which is why they're there, which is why they're organs in the body, which is why they're important. But they don't do them without the brain. You know, the heart doesn't just in and of itself beat. The lungs don't just in and of themselves respire, inspire, aspire, I forgot the word, but you just don't respirate without the brain, okay? And so these machines that were created about the mid-century, around the 1950s, if I remember what he says in the article, these machines, to some extent, not completely, but to some extent, are taking over these aspects of the brain, these regulatory aspects. Call it the mediating aspects of the brain, to put it in the words of Di Grazia. Okay? But I just wanted to point that out to you. Hold on, the cat wants to come into the room. She's out there crying, so I have to let her in. Give me 1 second here. Come on in, baby. Yes, you're fine. Come on in. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so that's an important definition to know. What is the whole brain standard? Okay. Also, at the end of page 2, going into page 3, Di Grazia talks about, on the older view, which would be cardiorespiratory, is the heart functioning or the lungs functioning. Okay, a patient was alive so long as respiration of any sort occurred, but on the whole brain account, such a patient is dead. Actually, why did I want to? Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, it's on pages 1 going into page 2. Okay. Sorry about that. So just, note that page 1 to page 2, where it talks about the Harvard Medical School. Okay. What changed? Well, as it says in the 1950s, mechanical respirators were invented. We got heart-lung machines, etc., and so forth. And so that, according to Di Grazia, kind of blurred the distinction. For me, that actually makes the distinction blurred the boundaries of what death is if we look at it as the whole brain theory. But actually, for me, it kind of supports the whole brain theory, because these machines are taking the place of actually regulatory and mediating functions that the brain provides, as well as doing things that the heart and lungs provide. I'm not saying it's just the brain, but the brain with the heart and the lungs. And then down here it mentions a 1968 report by Harvard Medical School, okay, the ad hoc committee of Harvard Medical School, and that was very influential because I believe that was the advice of this committee was generally taken up by state legislatures, by governments, to enshrine the whole brain idea for death into law, because people didn't want to get sued. As I'm sure a number of you know, because I know a bunch of you are in the medical profession, are going to be in the medical profession as nurses, perhaps doctors. You have to carry insurance. You have to carry accident insurance for tort claims. And, because you're in the business of taking care of people, and sometimes accidents happen, or people feel that they're harmed by their medical care professionals, and they sue. So if you, for example, decide to take out the heart of somebody in order to make an organ donation to someone else who needs a heart, and according to the law, or the law is iffy about whether that person was dead or not, that provides an opening for someone to sue you and say, well, you killed that person, according to the law. So, of course, doctors and medical professionals wanted some kind of clarity about, okay, what is our liability if we start, quote unquote, harvesting organs from somebody? We want to be able to say, according to the law, at least, that the person is dead, so we can't be sued. Also, another concern that is mentioned here at the bottom of page 1 is money. Money. We are a capitalist society, and anyone who watches Shark Tank, I love what's his name, Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, all I care about is money. You know, he is a capitalist to the bone. And we live in a capitalist society. Money, 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 baby. So it costs a lot of money to take care of somebody who might be in a vegetative state, but who's breathing, you know, blood is circulating, all the responds to certain external stimuli. So all or most of the indicators are that this person is still alive, even if their brain is in a vegetative state or comatose state or whatever. Well, what if the law was such that we could legally remove, I don't know, say food and drink from this person and starve them to death? And we're not really starving them to death because according to the law, they're already categorized as dead. Okay? These were issues, and I'm glad that De Grazia brings them up so casually and forthrightly, because me, as a Catholic theologian, as one who aspires to live by the principles of Jesus Christ, it's interesting that the primary question was not for these medical professionals at Harvard or politicians or whatever, legislators. The primary question was not, when does a human person die? See, that's a different question. Okay? A human person and death. Okay, first of all, you're talking about a human being. Okay? Not a plant. Not not a dog. Okay? And yes, I know that there are people in the world and out there who would, say that I'm being speciesist by saying that human life is more important or better and is to be valued more highly than a dog's life. Well, sorry, I just am. Okay, go with it. Disagree with me if you will. That's fine. But just know that that's how I'm going to view it. Why is death? The very fact that you're asking the question, death and this human organism, let's say, already implies that there's something special about the human person. Okay? Otherwise, why would we be obsessing over what the death of this creature means? There's something more important about what happens to this creature than what happens to other creatures on planet Earth. Okay? Even if you're an atheist, all right? You value the death of a human person over the death of another animal. I mean, that's why we have hospitals. Okay? And yes, we have veterinarians, but who take care of animals and whatnot, but they're completely different setups. I mean, you don't find ICUs at a vet's office. You don't find them trying to save the life of animals the way we try to save a human life. There's an old saying that there are no atheists in foxholes, meaning that, when you're facing death and wartime, for example, everyone's praying, even if you're an atheist, because you don't want to die. I would extend that metaphor. I would say that there are no atheists in hospital emergency rooms. I mean, even the most inveterate, hardened atheist is going to fight to the death, to save the life of a human being. Why? Why doesn't the atheist just simply say, well, that's nature. That's evolution. That's the way things are. Person gets a disease. The disease doesn't know it's killing its host. It's just doing what it does, and the person dies. Why waste money and time keeping a person with a disease alive or treating that person, why not just let the disease run its course? The disease isn't evil, you know. Well, you say, well, person's suffering, you know, the person, well, suffering is natural. Suffering is simply the, you know, nerve endings, or the nervous system is being stimulated in a way that, you know, causes pain rather than pleasure to the person. You know, why should that affect us? Well, the person might die. Well, yeah, people, creatures die every day. Things die every day on this planet. And this universe, you know, things go out of existence. That's perfectly normal. I'm not saying I agree with this, but I'm just trying to show how even a person who might say, well, there's no God. I'm a doctor, but there's no God. I'm a nurse, but I don't believe in God. You know, are actually practically theists in the way they act towards human existence. They act like it matters that a person should, if they do die with dignity, without pain, without undue suffering. It matters that when a person dies, you treat the body with respect. Okay, you don't start laughing and joking and kidding around. You treat the person with respect. Why? Why? You know, it's like a plant that dies. You know, you walk. You know, you've walked into the emergency room and you find a potted plant that's all brown and you know, it's, you know, leaves are falling off. It's dead. You throw it in the garbage. Why should it matter that Mr. Smith died over there during the night? Or little Johnny or Jane? Well, sorry, I went off on a tangent there. Okay. Well, it troubles me that these were the two things that bother them. It wasn't death per se, knowing when a person dies, but it was knowing when a person dies. Number one, and these are not in any particular order. Number one, money. We don't want to spend money on a losing horse, basically. You know, we don't want to have to keep alive and spend all that money and pay people to take care of a person who, although may have no consciousness, may be in a comatose state, may have some minimal brain function, is really not fully conscious, is not in a state of existence that one might call human, but the person is alive. All the indicators are that the person is alive. You have some brain, even have some brain activity, response to stimuli, but the person, you know, is not going to live what we might say is a fully human life. And it's irreversible. You know, it's not like it's going to change. Unless there's some miracle and God intervenes, this is not going to change. This is going to be the person's life. You know, you might have a 30-year-old, and then you got to take care of them for what? However long until they die. And this might be until the person is in his 60s or 70s. Always in a bed. You know, never going anywhere, not apparently thinking, but, you know, alive enough, one might say. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. Who's going to pay for that? The government? Well, we don't have government health care for the most part in this country. In some states you do, like Massachusetts, more or less, kind of like government health care. In some countries you do. For example, say Great Britain. People always bring up Canada, but I have to be honest. I lived in Canada. I have friends in Canada. Canada is not a universal healthcare system the way we think it is, where the government controls everything. Okay, but that's a whole other issue. The United Kingdom would be a better example, where you have the National Health Service and the government. Let me write this down. The National Health Service, the NHS, is what people call it. And it kind of, all the tax money or money allocated every year is what they have. And as the money runs out every year, the National Health Service, they have to start making decisions about, which medical cases. I hate to be perverse or to sound flip about it, but they have to, decide where they're going to throw their money. And if, let's say, you have the case of someone who has a very rare disease, very low possibility, even with treatment of living, the NHS might say, I'm sorry, we have to really put our resources towards helping people who have a, practical, a real possibility of survival. So money bothers me. The fact that money is an issue, and I know money's an issue. I understand. People are just not going to do things for free. I get it. I'm a realist as much as you are. Okay, I'm not an optimist. I'm also pessimistic. I'm a pessimistic optimist. I'd like to believe that things will turn out okay and that people will do the right thing, but I just know that, most of the time they won't. So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that, life sucks and people stink and whatever. But I do like to say I'm an optimist because, I want to leave that, that possibility of being surprised when someone does actually, do something altruistic. Excuse me, I'm just taking a sip of coffee here. So yes, I know money is involved. I know people's time and effort, even if people did it for free, their time and effort is involved to take care of this human being who is in such a condition. So I understand that, and I'm not saying that, we have to live with our heads in the clouds and but it does trouble me that was one of the major factors, because money is also a very strong motivator, in my experience, for not doing the right thing. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. Money is dangerous. You can get people to do things that ethically or morally they might not even consider doing if you offer them money, or if money is involved. A person might say, well, you know what? Keep Uncle or keep Aunt Jane on that respirator for the rest of her life because she's still alive. The brain is still functioning. The heart she just has a lung problem. She needs a respirator. Okay, fine. Well, Matthew, it's going to cost a lot of money and you don't have any insurance. Where are you going to get the money from? Are you going to come here every day and clean and wash her and feed her? And well, no, I got a life too. Well, okay. It's a very powerful motivator, money. The other thing is organ transplants. Well, let's say organ donation. You got something that other people want. You got something that other people need. Let's put it that way. Okay? And if we can't declare you dead because, your brain is still pretty much functioning, but, you're not conscious, you're not having much of a human life, you're bedridden for the rest of your existence, you got to be taken care of 24/7, 365 and a quarter. But man, you've got all these juicy organs in your body that other people could use. Other people who are not in your condition. Young people, children, I'm not talking about some 70-year-old man who smoked himself to death and now needs 2 lungs. I'm talking about maybe some poor little 13-year-old girl, cheerleader on the Pee Wee football team who gets cancer of the liver. And she needs a liver. and you got one, but damn it, you're still alive. You know? So what do we do about that? What do we do about that? You know, do we look at the person? Do I look at you and see you as kind of like in a sense, a refrigerator? That I can open you up every now and then and, oh yeah, you know, I needed a gallon of milk. Okay, boom. Or, you know, oh, you know, I needed some butter. Boom, close the door, you know. You know, think about, I mean, to me, that is grotesque. But that's just me. To me, that is almost like horror movie-ish, you know? You know, like Dr. Giggles or something. Which was just... it was a movie from, I think, the 90s, Dr. Giggles. Let's see if we can find this on the internet. It just, you know... It wasn't a good horror movie. In fact, I should rent it and watch it just to see. But it's called Dr. Giggles because every time, or he's a mad doctor. He's insane, and he performs all these experiments, of course, on people and kills people. It's a horror film, you know, so it's got to be gory. Takes out their organs while they're still alive without anesthetic, and while he's doing this, he has a you know, this kind of funny giggle, you know. Dr. Giggles, yes. Do I want to show you my email? Probably not. Let's see here. YouTube, I don't know if you can hear what's on my computer. But anyways, let's see if I can... There we are, Dr. Giggles. Oh, Dr. Giggles! Ooh, the full movie. Ooh, that's interesting. Trailer? I don't know if... Okay, I had sort of a little crash on my screen recorder. But that's okay. I'll continue on. Inert. The word inert occurs on the 3rd page. And I would like to define that for you. So I'll show you what I do. I go to a dictionary. Merriam-Webster. Merriam-Webster Dictionary Online is a handy-dandy resource. I use it all the time. Now let's wait for it to do its thing there. Oh, actually, Dr. Giggles came out in 1992. Will Dr. Dunn ask you about that on the quiz? Yeah, I think so. At least make you remember the course. You'll be like, you know, I had this crazy professor teaching an online course, and he actually asked us a question on a test about Dr. Giggles, some 90s horror show. You know? Oh, well. At least you'll remember the course. Okay, inert. What does the word inert mean? I mean, I know what it means. You know, it's like inertia. To say someone has inertia means a lack of movement. Okay, basically. But, you know, it's always good to be specific and to see. So I put it in here, into their dictionary, and what do we got? Unable to move. Moving or acting slowly, lacking the power to move. Okay, interesting. And I always like to look at the etymologies of words just to see where it's come from. It comes from Latin, and ers, unskilled or idle. Ah, that's interesting. The word art, ars artis, which means skill. I don't know if you can see that. Let me make the text larger for you. I don't know why that can't opened up. I didn't click on it, but anyways, where are we here? There we go. Medical, medical, interesting. Lacking the power to move, okay. Means the same thing. All right, I want to get to the etymology. There we are. Latin, unskilled, idle. from the word for skill, which is our word for art. A lot of our words in English come from Latin and Greek. So lacking skill. Let's make this what I want it to be. Okay. Interesting. Clean this up a bit. Iners, which means unskilled, idle, comes from the Latin word for art, which means skill. Ars artis, it would be. And inert means, well, I think looking at those definitions, I would say lacking the capacity for movement. Capacity for movement. Something that's inert. Excuse me, another sip of coffee there. So let me okay. Maybe put these in italics because they're foreign words. From the Latin in airs, not skilled, unskilled, idle. Now, why do I say ars artis here? Because when you are citing Latin or Greek, you always cite the noun form, which is called the nominative, and then you give the possessive, which is called the genitive, or the possessive. Whoops. Why do you do this? Because as you can see here with the word for art, for skill, it changes. It changes. Ars is the noun form. Art, just the word skill itself, is that. But when you use it in other ways as the genitive or the possessive case of skill, to skill, sound, it's weird, but I could give other better examples than this, but this is what I'm stuck with. Notice that the S changes to a T when it adds the possessive ending. Now, you say, well, this is unfamiliar to me, Dr. Dunn. No, it's not. No, it's not. We have these cases in English. Not a lot of them. We've lost a lot of our endings from Old English, okay? But in point of fact, we have these cases. What would be a noun case? Girl. Girl. What would be the genitive or the possessive? Girls. Actually, now let's do the plural. The plural. Okay? A group of girls. A group of girls. What would be the plural possessive? Girls. Sounds the same, but we put an apostrophe after the S. Okay? Now, yes, we have roundabout ways of saying the genitive. We don't need to use the case. Trying to think of what the word is. A paraphrastic, I think it is. Anyways, of the girl, of the girls. Okay, and then you don't really have to worry about is an apostrophe S or an S apostrophe. But this is an actual case. Why do we put an S at the end of girl to indicate the genitive? Because it's a case, and we still have them, just like Latin. Just like Latin. It's just that in English, the words don't really change, you know. Girl, girl. Whereas in Latin, sometimes it does. Ars, artis. Okay? So inert, lacking the capacity or the ability or the capability, however you want to put it. Actually, maybe I will change this to ability. Maybe it's a better word. Lacking the ability for movement. But ability, capacity, capability, I think they all pretty much mean the same thing. They're all synonymous. Okay, so that's what the word inert means, if you were wondering. on page 4, I would take note of the fact that that De Grazia refers to Uddoda as UDDA. Okay, UDDA. And what is Uddoda? The Uniform Determination of Death Act. The Uniform Determination, you got to be kidding me, Determination of Death Act. Okay, it's I don't know if it's an actual legislative act, but whatever. That's kind of how a short-term way of referring to, a shorthand way of referring to this idea that there are two standards for death. One is the whole brain idea that, you know, there has to be a cessation, an irreversible stoppage of the functioning of the whole brain, not just the higher brain, but also the lower brain, which is the brain stem. But Uddoda also includes the irreversible stoppage of the heart and respiratory system, so cardiorespiratory. Okay, and as De Grazia points out, the way it's written in Uddoda, it's disjunctive. Disjunctively written. What does that mean? Well, disjunctive means either or. It's a disjunction, a lack of joining. You're not bringing things together, you're distinguishing them apart. So it's either whole brain or cardiorespiratory, which was the traditional method. Okay, if it were both, if they were saying the whole, which I really think is actually better for determining death, that's my personal view, and I think that's also would be the view, well, anyways, that's my personal opinion. I'm just telling you that both of these go together. Okay, so I guess I would side with those who would see the whole brain idea as really a continuation of the traditional standard of the vital sign, taking vital signs, namely, is the heart pumping blood, are the lungs processing oxygen, are you respiring? And I know there's a difference between inspire, taking in, respiration is taking in and out. I think inspire is to take in, and aspire, aspiration, is to breathe out, if I remember correctly. But the whole process, I think, is called respiration. Anyways, if we were taking both of these together, that would be conjunctive. Both and. Both. Whoops. Both and. And you can see dis usually means some sort of, say, pulling apart or, you know, making a separation, some sort of separation. So if a bone is disjointed, it's out of place. You know, or say someone, oh, you seem very disjointed today. You know, you're kind of out of place. You know, you're not all together. Whereas conjunctive is you're all together. Okay? This word con comes from the Latin cum, which means with. Which means with. So you're with it. Okay? You're all together, you know? We even say that in English. You're with it. You know, we say you're with it, and it means you got your stuff all together, you know? You're conjunctive, one might say. You are, you know, you are a whole. So both and. You're taking both together, okay? No, the way Uddoda is written is disjunctively, which means you can take either the whole brain option as an option or the cardiorespiratory. And for me, that's that's so typical of the political class. They want to have it both ways. They want to keep it open-ended. They don't, after all the talk and all the reports and all the commissions and whatever, at the end of the day, they make a decision by not really making a decision. And that's how I kind of view UDOTA. It doesn't really make any decision. It just gives legal coverage because, let's say, well, you want the organs. You want the organs. Well, you can say, well, the brain is dead, the brain's not there, so, he's still breathing, still the heart is still working, but, Bob just isn't there anymore, so we can declare him dead and start harvesting his organs. On the other hand, let's say you have somebody who, is kind of conscious, there is some kind of consciousness, but there's difficulty with the cardiorespiratory, and so it's going to be expensive to keep this person alive. Well, Mary, she really doesn't breathe on her own, and her heart, doesn't have, isn't really working on its own without our help. So, but she is conscious, but still, let's just declare her dead and write off the loss, in that kind of manner of speaking. So that's UDOTA. What is that, page 4? Whoops. Which is right here. Okay, he spends a lot of time on the whole brain thing, and I don't want to spend as much time on this. I think it is important, though, since we're talking about death and the whole brain death versus the heart and the lungs. We kind of know what the heart and the lungs are, but maybe some of this talk about the brain might be a little bit beyond some people who have not taken anatomy. And so I might give you something on the brain. Moving on to the next point of view, which is the higher brain approach, which starts on page 8. For some reason, DeGrazia calls this the progressive alternative. And honestly, I don't know why. Maybe because, as he mentions elsewhere, the higher brain approach has a lot of support amongst more quote-unquote liberally minded thinkers. I have to be honest with you, these terms liberal and conservative are political terms. I don't know what they mean anymore. I don't know. I personally, they just have no value to me anymore. I don't think they have any more meaning. What is a liberal and what is a conservative? Think about it for yourself. What would you consider conservative? What would you consider liberal? Why is it liberal to be pro-choice rather than pro-life? I don't, or is it these just words we throw around? I don't see what is so progressive. Though, a change in language has occurred where liberals don't call themselves liberals anymore. They call themselves progressives because they even admit that the term liberal doesn't really have much meaning for defining what the person is about. So now they say, I'm progressive, I'm for progress, for moving forward, not holding on to the past or past points of view just because they are time-honored traditions or people have held them before. Okay, I want to keep moving forward. Okay, so progress. And the word progress in Latin does mean basically a going forward or a movement towards something or forwards. Okay? But here, I think it's totally inappropriate for DeGrazia to use it. I don't know what a progressive alternative is. Okay, because what he's really talking about here is a philosophical view of what makes a human person, not through testing and going through a list of things that you can look at, like a doctor would. Like, for example, in the video you hopefully watched, Moment of Death, which was on the National Geographic Channel. Remember the scene where, it's not a scene, but the part of the show where they have brought in Mr. A, as they call him, who has been shot in the head, apparently, and has basically lost all brain function because of it, okay? And so they have him on, I guess, a respirator and whatnot, and it shows the doctor going through the whole progression, going through the whole list of, or I guess checklist of things he ought to do to determine whole brain death. There are all sorts of things he does. I'm not going to go through the list, but if you saw the video, it's quite comprehensive. It's quite comprehensive. That's not what the progressive approach is about. The progressive approach starts from, let's say here, progressive. I do not really like it. Whoops. Let me make a non-smiley face so you know. Mr. Dunn, no like. Okay? I would call it philosophical or the theoretical approach, as opposed to the whole brain theory or the whole brain approach, which is more practical, more practically oriented, based on really hard data. But the people who are supposedly progressives with this idea of the higher brain, they're dealing with questions of personhood, consciousness, etc., which are more properly philosophical questions. And I think the difference can be seen in the fact that they can't come to any sort of consensus even amongst themselves on what these things are. The appeal to the essence of the human person. Well, these supposed progressive alternativists, or I would say philosophically minded ones, who want to say that when the higher brain functions, in which I guess, human consciousness is believed to be embedded in the brain, when that's gone, then your person's dead. Okay? But as you see, they address questions like human personhood, consciousness. He uses this word, de Grazia, and notes that it is a ontological approach. Okay? It's talking here about the essence of a human person, meant in the sense of ontology. Ontology? What is ontology? Well, I got to tell you. Ontology comes from the Greek word ontos, okay, which can mean being, existence, essence, substance, what or how something exists. Okay, nowadays in philosophy, it seems to me that the focus is very much on the how something exists, not what it is, but how it is. And I think you see this mentality show itself in debates about transgenderism. Bruce Jenner, when Bruce Jenner decided to become a woman, this famous athlete, Bruce Jenner, who won, gold medals at the Olympics and decided he was always a woman and wanted to become a woman. Or Chastity Bono, who was a girl, decided to become Chaz Bono, a man. It's not what I am, it's how I am. This kind of view of it's how you exist. Do you exist as a male or a female? Do you exist as a homosexually attracted person or heterosexually attracted person or transsexual person, whatever, Okay, whatever. So ontos has this meaning of the state of being. Okay, so ontological, when they're talking about ontology in regards to this question, okay, these proponents of the higher brain approach, when they talk about, what is a human person, they're really, talking about what is the essence of the human person. What makes up this human person? What is the existence? What does it mean to exist as a human person? What makes a human existence different from another animal existence or the existence of other creatures? All right. Clearly, we've been dumped into philosophy here. I know a little bit about my job, so I know, I can smell, I can smell philosophy a mile away. This is philosophy, okay? Philosophy guised in science, because they're talking about the higher brain, where supposedly one believes that human consciousness resides, so not the whole brain. Human consciousness apparently does not reside in the brain stem, according to these theorists or proponents. But notice how very little they actually talk about the nitty-gritty of the brain, okay? And how the brain works and the actual thing that is a brain, all right? All their arguments are theoretical. They're philosophical, which does not mean that they're bad. I'm not dismissing them. Remember, I have a BA in philosophy. Okay, I have a degree in theology. Theology and philosophy historically have been very closely related. Okay, so I use a lot of philosophical ideas, etc., in my work as a theologian. So I'm not showing disrespect to philosophers or philosophy. However, philosophy can become stupid philosophy. That's my term for it. When it becomes disconnected, when it obscures or obfuscates reality rather than making things clearer. Okay? That's my view of philosophy. I think that I've read too many philosophers who, when you read them, you don't know what the heck they're talking about. And in fact, there are some philosophers who enjoy that fact. They love the fact. They try to write in such a way that they're almost impenetrable. Which is why, personally, I love a lot of the ancient and the medieval philosophers, because, they just kind of say what they say. They talk about, they present their views and they argue for them, and you can follow them. They might still be very difficult to follow, but you can follow them. A lot of the modern philosophers or contemporary philosophers, I find them unreadable. It's almost like they're playing games with your mind. Tell me what you're trying to say. And sometimes philosophers can want to continue the argument rather than coming to a conclusion. They find what's the word I'm looking for? They find pleasure more in the argument than in coming to some sort of conclusion. And that's the problem I have with this philosophical view, this higher brain approach. And I think you can see it in the way de Grazia outlines it. On page 8, the question of what is a person? Okay, what makes a human person? Then page 9, okay, excuse me, yeah, we come up with three different views. There's the human person, there's a human being, and then there are those who would rather want to say that we are minds or minded beings, meaning that we have minds in our organism. We are organisms, but with minds. Okay. But at the end of the day, even de Grazia has to admit that it's one of the major arguments against this point of view is that you can't pin these people down on what they mean by their terms. You know, for one person arguing for the higher brain approach, he or she has a view of human personhood that is totally different from another person arguing for that approach, and they're both arguing for the same approach, which is a lack of consciousness. So it makes it, difficult to, the one, I guess, the strength of the whole brain approach is that it is consistent within itself, and it can be demonstrated. See, I don't get a sense in reading the section from these higher brain approach theorists. I don't get a sense that they want to establish their ideas at all. They're just proposing them as ideas, and who's to say that they're right? Whereas a whole brain approach, a person can say, well, look, there's no gag reflex, there are no brain waves. I shine a light in the guy's eyes, and the pupils don't dilate, they don't constrict, they do nothing. If you take him off the respirator, he won't breathe. If his heart is not receiving any signals from the brain to beat and circulate blood, you can go down the line. And after a while, these all kind of build up to the fact that brain is shot. The brain ain't working anymore. The body isn't working. It's if we removed all of our interventions, the respirator, we removed anything that's keeping the heart pumping blood, the body would start to decay. Death would set in. We would get algor mortis, livor mortis, rigor mortis, all the signs of a corpse. Why? Because the person's dead. Whereas with these people who are arguing for the higher brain, they're talking about consciousness, and they're all kind of tying themselves into knots to define what is human. And, the real, I guess, it's just maybe a strong word, but the real bankruptcy of the view, I think, comes at the end, which is it page 11? Let me see here. Yeah, it comes at the end in 2.2, Appeals to Personal Identity, where some scholars finally say, well, forget about the essence. Forget about the question of ontology. We'll just come up with an idea of what a human person is, and by that standard, we can then say what a human person is not. And in my experience of thinking about things and reading philosophers, once you get into that realm of people or that situation where a person just kind of throws up his or her hands and says, well, who cares? Then I think there's a problem with your approach. There's a significant problem with your approach. Because if it doesn't matter, then you wouldn't argue over it. Then you don't have anything. Okay? Then, you're just, and you're in essence, you're almost arguing over, whether the moon is made of cheese in a way. Or whether there are little green men living on Mars. Well, who cares? It doesn't matter. Sometimes people do that because they don't want to think about the issue. And I've encountered that. People are just, frankly, too lazy in some cases. Other times people are just too tired, mentally tired to really apply the energy to thinking about it. But when you have a person who's invested in the discussion and says, well, we'll just come up with an idea of personal identity and forget about essence. Well, that's the whole problem. That's the whole problem. Your whole position is based on, the whole position of the higher brain thing is based on human consciousness, which makes the person. And if at the end of the day, like Green and Wickler are going to say, well, we'll stay agnostic about the question of essence, okay? We'll just say that, well, how is something dead? Well, you know it when you know it. You know it when you, kind of like the you know it when you see it approach. At that point, I think you've kind of conceded your argument to other positions, because you've kind of admitted that, what, we really can't say, what makes death death. We just know it when we see it. Okay, well, then what was all the time spent arguing over it for? Okay, on page 12, De Grazia talks about an appeal to prudential value, and this is also part of the idea of the loss of consciousness, the loss of conscious life, or what one might call the higher brain approach. Once the higher brain has been irreversibly damaged so that there is no more consciousness, regardless of whether the brainstem still keeps the body breathing and pumping blood and responding to stimuli, you are dead. In this approach, De Grazia notes the appeal to prudential value. Okay, now I know what prudence means from a philosophical point of view. My assumption is that's how he's using it here, but he might not be. And I find his use of the term very confusing, and I just want to bring this to your attention, just in case you found it confusing too. From the prudential point of view, it would argue that the capacity for consciousness is not essential in a metaphysical sense, but in, I guess, a practical sense. Okay? Here we again see that the people who argue this view, and maybe this is De Grazia because he cites himself, an article he wrote, might be trying to kind of jump over or place to the side the ontological question. That metaphysical could be another word for ontological. The question of essence, and look more at act, the practical side, how not our potentiality for consciousness, but act, something that we do and we need to do in order to be truly human, which would be consciousness. And remember, consciousness includes dreaming. If you read the article above this, consciousness includes the dream state as well. Okay, so it doesn't mean that you're not unconscious when you sleep. There's a difference between sleeping and being unconscious. Let me just state that in case maybe you don't know it or you forgot it. Okay, so from this perspective, the appeal to prudential value, the ability of consciousness is not essential to our nature, but it is indispensable to our nature. It's something that we can't live without and still be human. And he keeps using this word prudential. Prudential, prudentially. Okay. Yeah. Okay, well, we need to define this because I have to be honest with you, I don't understand what he's talking about when he uses this word prudential. If he's using it in a philosophical sense, it doesn't make any sense to me. So he must be using it, I would assume, in another sense. Okay? So down here, the irreversible loss of the capacity for consciousness would mean death. Death. Right, for him. What is a philosophical meaning of prudence? Well, I dig deep into my memory. Prudence is a virtue. It's a moral virtue. It's a habit. It's a habit of human nature that we have to practice. Okay, we're not born with prudence. We have to practice it. And the virtues are things that make us really more human, make us better humans, one might say. And prudence is the virtue of how to, of determining what is the good, let's say, and the best means for achieving the good. Okay? So it's a prudence of action. Okay? It's a manner of judgment. Okay? You make a judgment, a determination of what is the good life. And most importantly, what is the best means for achieving the good life. Now, philosophically, a person might come up with a whole number of ideas about what the good life is. Okay? Someone might say that the good life is pleasure, the achievement of pleasure. Not just sensual pleasure, the pleasure of the senses, but the pleasure of wisdom, friendship, stuff like that. Okay, well, what's the best way to achieve that? Okay? Someone might say that the good of life is to be wise. All right, well, what's the best way to achieve that? So you want to develop prudence, and prudence just doesn't deal with the ultimate things like what is a good way to live life, but it deals with everything in your life. You want to make a prudential judgment on how to do something, meaning what is the thing I need to do, which should be good, which should be good to do. Prudence does not allow room for choosing things that are bad. And what will be the best means or way for achieving that good that I want to do? So, for example, well, let's go back to friendship. Let's say that I think friendship is a value. Okay, it's a good thing to have. So I've made that determination. Now, what's the best means for achieving that? Well, let's say in my prudential judgment, the best way for achieving that is to go out and knock somebody over the head, bring him home, put him in a cage, and now he's my friend. Now I have a friend. I've achieved what I've determined to be good. Okay? Now, is that the best way for achieving that good of friendship? No. So that's not the virtue of prudence. Okay? You might find that the best way is maybe go out to where there are group activities, to talk to somebody, to get to know that person, to accept that person for who he or she is, etc. and so forth. So that's prudence. You're exercising the virtue of prudence in this case. So it doesn't always have to be about ultimate questions like the good life. It can be for more immediate concerns. So prudence. That's the philosophical understanding that I've been given. But when I look up prudential in the dictionary, here it is, having or showing careful good judgment. Okay. See if we got anything else here. maybe synonyms. No synonyms? Nope. Okay, so showing good judgment. That's prudence in the philosophical sense. Prudence in the general sense is, having good judgment, let's say. Short and sweet. You have good judgment. Well, let's plug this back in to de Grazia's notion of the appeal to prudential value, what is not essential to us but indispensable. Okay? So one need not claim that the capacity for conscience underlies everything of maybe relating to good judgment. Yeah. Yeah, I don't understand how he's using the word prudential here. It has to do with a decision. It has to do with a determination that one makes. So is what he's saying, is what de Grazia is arguing, is he arguing that death is what I, in my good judgment, view as, or life as taking something away from me that I consider indispensable? Okay? Now let me put that, let me try to expound on that, because, I think I have it, but it might not have come out the way it is in my head. Okay? Let's put it this way. I make a judgment of what I think is indispensable to human life, and based on that prudential judgment, that judgment of what I think is the good, is an ultimate good, or an indispensable good for human life, then I act on it. I determine then I can make a decision that this for me is death. And so in the case of the higher brain, consciousness is death. I think that's what he's saying. I think that's what he's saying. But I'm not sure. And I have to admit that I'm not sure, because I'm just not sure. I'm having to read into his use of this term that I know to be prudent means that you have to make a decision, and you have to make a decision that is good, not good in the sense of good versus bad, like good versus evil, like intrinsically good versus intrinsically evil, but in the sense that it is a decision that makes sense. It makes sense. Okay, I think that's where he's going with that. Okay? But, whatever. And if we look on page 14 at the bottom, I think we get really a strong support for the whole brain approach. Whether de Grazia realizes that or not, I don't know, because it keeps coming back to this example, or the example of the fact that at a hospital, doctors can intervene in the deterioration or the death of a body by putting someone on a heart-lung machine or something, so that they can artificially replace organismic functions like breathing and the heart pumping with machinery. Okay? But these are interventions. This is interventive medicine. Okay? And we know this. We talk that way. You're hooking me up to machines. there is no intervention for when the brain goes. You have a problem with the heart, you can hook one up to a machine to pump blood through your body and to oxygenate the blood. Got a problem with your lungs, you've got, they're not breathing, they're not working, you can intubate somebody and force the lungs to respire. Okay, you can force respiration. You cannot intervene with the brain. When the brain is, a part of the brain is damaged, like let's say the brain stem, it ain't coming back. It's not going to reproduce. There's no machine, no computer you can stick into the brain stem and make it work. Oh, hey, a person has an irregular heartbeat. You can give them a pacemaker and make sure that the electrical pulse is going to the heart to make sure it beats. You can intervene, and I think that's the difference between the cardiorespiratory, what de Grazia describes as the traditional way of determining death, and the whole brain way, is that the traditional way, you're dealing here with interventions. There ain't no intervention for the brain. And we all kind of know that. You can come back from, a severe injury to your lungs or a severe injury to the heart. You can come back from that. Or if you're treated quickly enough, they can hook you up to a machine, and that machine takes the place of the organ, but it also takes the place of certain things that the brain might be doing. With the brain, it's all or nothing. It's really all or nothing. The brain can sustain some amount of injury. At least that's what I see. I'm not a doctor, so tell me if I'm wrong. Okay? But the brain can sustain some amount of, maybe injury is not the right word, stress. Okay? So for example, if a person has a head injury and there's pressure on the brain and pressing that fluid in the brain, it can press on the brain. Or a person has cancer in the brain, okay? But at a certain point, the brain becomes injured, and at that point, it's all or nothing. Either the brain is healthy or it's not. And if the brain is injured, then certain things don't work anymore. If it's seriously injured, then it can be life-threatening. Okay? And there's no machine that can take the place of it. No machine. That, I think, is probably really the slam dunk for me for the whole brain theory. And integrated in, and I agree with de Grazia's point, or the point of those who are saying there should be a more integrative or integrative understanding. I don't think the reason that the heart and the lungs might not work is because there's brain death. Okay? On the flip side, a person might experience brain death because either the heart or the lungs or both stop working or stops working. Okay? I think that, it's not so simple as, I don't think it's so simple to characterize the whole brain approach as, oh, it's just the brain. I think it includes, by definition, or other organs of the body, because if other major critical organs of the body don't work properly, then the brain will die. But also if the brain dies, they die. Okay, so there's a reciprocity, and what's the word what they call it in biology? I can't remember the word. I got it. Symbiosis. Okay, which comes from Greek. Comes from two words in Greek. Sun plus bios. Okay, sun means with or together. It can also mean together. And bios means life. Okay? So living together, a lot of times they use this in regards to parasites. You know, there's some. Have you ever seen the show Monsters Inside Me? That's on Animal Planet. Great show. I love that show. I need to watch it more. I haven't watched it in a while. But anyways, you know, there are parasites that are symbiotic. You know, they live in the human body. Well, we have symbiotic parasites in our body, in our intestinal tract. They live off of us. They live off of the food that we give ourselves, and we live off of them because they digest the food, and which is why we have gas and we fart or we burp, etc., and so forth. And of course, with little kids, you know, hee hee hee, you know, they laugh at this. But this is, you know, if you went up to them and said, "Hey, you know, you got parasites in you," they might be like, "What? You know, real cooties? There are real cooties on our bodies, in our bodies." But once we die, of course, that symbiotic relationship changes. It's no longer symbiotic. The bacteria that exist in our gut start to digest us because there's no other food. Okay, we're the food then. But we do have a symbiotic relationship. We live with each other and we benefit each other. And so I think that's how the brain cardio heart lung thing relationship should be looked at as a symbiotic relationship. All three kind of rely on each other. But the difference between the heart and the lungs is that we can replace those. We can intervene in the situations if they're not working properly. And what's the other word I want to intervene? I wrote it down here somewhere. And we can maintain them. We can maintain them. You can't do that with the brain. You can't intervene in the case of a damaged brain or a brain that's not working properly. You can't replace it. You can't even maintain it. Unless, you know, you're some mad scientist in a horror movie and you've got a brain in a vat somewhere. You know, or you're Dr. Frankenstein, you know. Abby Normal. Sorry, I'm just thinking about other things. Okay, so moving on. Well, I'd like to come to the end. I'm sure you are getting tired of listening to me. On page 17, you will find what I think is a pretty good summary of objections to each of the points of view that De Grazia talks about. Really kind of short, given cogently stated, or short, given in a rather short way. That's not the word I'm looking for. Look at my thesaurus here, the word I'm looking for. Let's see here. Pithy, I guess, is what I wanted. Concise, that's the word I'm looking for. Concise way. So for the whole brain standard, okay, for him what matters is that there are still brain functions that are too trivial to count. So the brain, the whole brain standard says an irreversible cessation or stoppage of the whole brain, of the functioning of the whole brain, the higher brain and the lower brain. But there might still be some functions, still some neurons, clusters of neurons that are still firing and still active in the brain, but they're too trivial to account for. So he considers that an objection. Okay? If you're talking about the traditional standard of heartbeat and respiration, well, what's the cutoff point? How long do you wait after heartbeat, the ending of heartbeat or respiration, to determine that the person, the body, is dead? Because with medical technology today, as I'm sure you now realize from having watched Moment of Death, those videos, you know, you can bring people back. You know, there was the instance of the guy with his heart attack, and they used, what is it, hypothermic therapy, they called it. You know, they kind of chilled his body. There's the other case of the Hispanic gentleman who was in a coma for a few days. You know, sometimes the body itself shuts itself down like a computer. You know, it resets itself, and it takes a few days, because there's been such trauma to the brain or the body. Okay, so how long do you wait after you stop someone from breathing or the heart beating? The higher brain approach needs criteria for what sort of damage constitutes the loss of consciousness, where consciousness is irreversibly lost, okay, that a person is unconscious. Now, there's a famous case, I'll have to look it up on the internet, but I remember of a guy who was in a coma for years. I want to say even decades, but I forget if he was in England or something. I don't think it was here in America. I'd have to look it up on the internet. And he woke up. Obviously that's an extreme example. That's very exceptional. But it was kind of cool because, the guy, they could ask him, is it true that, that comatose patients can hear sounds while they're comatose? He said, yeah, I could hear people talking sometimes, stuff like that. So anyways, but he was, he was comatose. So he was conscious, though. If he could hear people talking while he was comatose, he was conscious. Now, according to a higher brain approach, you might say, well, he's been comatose for 6 months. He's not conscious. I think consciousness is gone. So that's an objection. The people who favor that approach, the scholars, can't seem to come together on what constitutes an irreversible loss of consciousness. Alrighty. He uses, this is something that I just want to bring to your attention, disaggregation. He uses this, I wasn't going to mention it, but he uses this word over and over and over again in this section. I guess he likes the word, whatever. So I want to define it for you. To disaggregate basically means to pick something apart. Okay? When you can take it apart, and let's just make sure that I'm correct on that definition. I think I am, but never know. Let's see. To separate or break apart. Yes, okay. To take or to take apart or to break apart. Okay, so just so you know, that's what that word means. Okay, those of you who are soccer fans, I'm a Leicester City fan. Holla! They won the English Premiership this year. Yoo-hoo! Woohoo! They won the cup, baby. You know that in soccer sometimes they'll play 2 games, and whatever the aggregate score is the team that wins. So let's say in the first game, it's Team A versus Team B, okay? And in the first game, Team A scores a goal, and Team B scores nothing, all right? So the aggregate so far is 1-0, or 1-0 if you're a soccer fan. But in the second game, okay, so that's the aggregate score. Okay, in the second game, actually I always put this in the middle so we can see. The aggregate then is 1-0. But in the second game, Team B, or Team A scores nothing, and Team B scores 2 goals. What would the aggregate be then? It would be 1-2. And so Team B would win on the aggregate. Okay? Let's make it even messier. Let's say that actually in this game, how would we work that? Let's say in this game they tied. Well, no. Well, you get the point. I'm making it too complicated for my animal brain, so we'll just leave it at that. So the aggregate will be 1-2, and Team B would win on aggregate goals because they scored more goals on aggregate when you add up all the goals from the two games. To disaggregate, remember dis, to take is a negative thing. It means, away from, apart from. We came, remember disjunctive above, we came across that. So to take apart the aggregate, to take these apart, to take apart or break apart. So that's what he means when he's using disaggregation and disaggregate in this section. And as I said, I wasn't going to mention it, but he uses the word like 5 times, so I guess I have to mention it. Looking over the last parts where we talk of death as a cluster concept, not amenable to classical definition. Again, if you can't define it, then leave me alone, basically. But I get the point that they're trying to make here, that death is a whole cluster of factors. It's a whole conglomeration of factors, not just organismic factors, bodily factors, but also factors of consciousness. Okay. Yes. This I kind of, I don't know, I kind of classify as the yin-yang view of death, that death is kind of like the flip side of life, and I have to admit to you that 4.2 is kind of a boring section, and I don't know to what extent I would, I'm going to ask you about it, but here we see the argument is that death really, is it just a matter of family resemblance? That there's something that is here, Chiang, the scholar, says some property is central to the cluster, like consciousness, okay, and possessing consciousness, makes one a member of a certain class, but merely possessing one or several properties that are peripheral on the edges, maybe not so central, might not make someone sufficient for membership. And he brings up robots. Okay. Robots are, I guess, cool. Some people love robots. My cousin, my nephew used to be part of a robotics club in high school. Yeah, and some people seem to think that one day we'll have microscopic little robots, whizzing around in our bloodstream, fixing things in our body, or killing us from the inside. Who knows? But just because, a robot is not a human or even a living creature. I mean, there's a total difference in class. And here I would say Chiang is making, again, a logical fallacy by bringing into the equation things that are, we say creatures, but they're secondary creations. They're creations of creatures. They're tools. A robot is a tool. Okay? It has been made by someone. You could say, well, isn't that the same case with us? If you believe in God, that God made us. True. You could view human beings as tools. And, okay, maybe then this example would mean something to you. But to me, a robot is not on the same level as even a cat or a dog or a plant. Okay? It might, be responsive because you tell it to be responsive. Okay? So, anyways. That's all I was going to say about that one. The last part about just saying that death is not a moral issue or has no moral status. I mean, here we really come, I guess, down to what some people want. that we'll just say what death is and say it has no moral implications at all. Whether you, as soon as you declare someone dead, you can basically do with the body, the corpse, what you want. You can harvest organs, and as DeGrazia points out, this has implications for euthanasia advocates, because, you know, if death has no moral value and you can declare someone dead and the declaration makes it so, well, in the case of someone, it's my own body. I should be the best judge of what, you know, quality of life is. And if I want to say that I'm dead or I'm ready for death, then that's fine. You know, and there's no moral status to what I'm doing. It's not right or wrong. It's me making a decision about whether I want to continue in this fashion. You know, so it's not. So you remove the whole question of morality, right and wrong, as an issue. Okay? There is no moral status to what you do to a person when the person is declared dead. Okay, so, you know, that's all I'm going to say about that. Yeah, I said that I would try to keep my talks to under an hour, and I seem to go 2 hours. Maybe I shouldn't promise that anymore. But anyways, so that's all I wanted to do with the reading, because some of these things I will test you on. So I hope you made your way through the reading. God bless you, and see you at the test.